Howdy folks, it's Adriel the Hunting Gear Guy, and this is the Savage Model 93F. It's Savage's rimfire 22 Magnum rifle. They also come in 17 HMR with a variety of stocks and barrel configurations and that kind of thing. I found that they're really accurate. I've got a 93 BVTS or BTVS. It's one of those two. Extremely accurate rifle. This one's just in 22 Win Mag. Why don't we take a closer look at this. Now, just before we do that, we are empty and the magazine is empty as well. So let's take a closer look at this rifle. Now at the rear of the 93F, we have just a plain plastic butt pad here. You don't need a fancy, like a squishy rubber butt pad. This thing doesn't have that much recoil, well, hardly recoil any at all. We've got a metal sling stud here, plastic grip cap. Again, this is the more budget-friendly trimming that Savage offers. On the side here, this is where we've got that safety. So we've got forward for fire and then back for safe. Once the safety's on, the trigger is blocked, it doesn't move, and with the safety off, it will fire. The bolt itself is just run up like that and then pulls back. The bolt will release by pulling down on the trigger and then pulling out the bolt right there. So now the magazines I don't especially like. They've got kind of this spring steel here, and then a guide that the magazine acts against. You can kind of see that it's got these little guide ears on here that it uses to grab onto that rail and push it in. It's not really great. I do much prefer the 10 rounders. There's just more to grab onto, and they're quite a bit easier to manipulate into place. So if you get one of these things and you do a lot of shooting with it, definitely get the 10 rounders. Just gonna leave that out for now. Along the top, we're going to see that it's drilled in tapped force bases. So if you want to, and I would really encourage you, if you're going to take some longer shots with this thing, to use a scope, even just a low magnification one would do. But that's really nice. It's nice that they don't rely on you to use those dovetail mounts there. There we've got our Accu trigger. I'm not going to press it on camera here for you, but a great trigger on this thing. We've got this ramped sight, and now just in case you haven't used one of these things, when they're right at the back of the ramp, that basically means that they're ready to fire for something close in. Whereas when you want to go a little bit further out, you just push that ramp a little bit back to the next notch over, and what that does is push the ramp up, and that'll basically let you shoot a little bit farther because you'll be aiming differently. So that's the ramp sight. Let me just pop it into the lowest setting there. And these are fairly simple and robust and inexpensive to make as well. The stock itself has some checkering kind of molded into it, but don't rely on this to be too gritty in inclement weather. Not that you really need to worry about that anyways. The barrel on this thing is just kind of a standard profile. I've got a heavier barrel on my 93 BTVS or BVTS, whichever one I've got. There's a little bit of a lighter profile barrel, but it's still fantastic. And the barrel is free floating in the stock there, so it will pass piece of paper all the way through. So I like that. It's a simple way of getting good accuracy out of a rifle for a low price. So nothing wrong with that. And then we've got just a standard target crown on there and a simple front sight as well. Now to disassemble this rifle, we're going to take our magazine out. We're going to remove our bolt. There's our bolt out. There are two action screws on the bottom here that I want to pay special attention to. That's the two here. They use a 5/32 Allen head. So sorry, it's never easy to show what I'm doing here and do the thing at the same time. Let's pull that rear one out, and let's go ahead to the front one. Now on some rifles you might need to muck around with the torque that you put down towards these two. I wouldn't go He-Man on them, they're not really meant for that, but definitely play around with it. There we go. So there's our factory stock. It doesn't look it, but it is pretty stiff for a plastic stock. There's not really a lot of bending. That's partly because it's short and partly because they went with a pretty thick plastic sidewall on here with some good ribbing in between as well. So really not moving at all. The action screws are not pillared in there, but I don't know if it's really necessary on a 22 Magnum. So take that as you will. And if you're interested, there's our internals there. There's that rail, and you can see that that paint is already chipping off of it. That's because this is likely an aluminum part that's just been painted on there. We've got our safety. You can see exactly how the safety works there. That big spring there is applying all the pressure to the safety, and that's exactly how that guy works right there. And then we've got our Accu trigger setup with the different springs and adjustment points on it as well. Now in terms of usability, this guy here comes with iron sights. I much prefer something with a scope, especially since a lot of the shooting I'm doing with these things is at gophers and they're quite small, right? So iron sights I can do out to 50, 75 yards kind of thing, but if you're going to go with 22 Win Mag or 17 HMR, I find a scope is just going to give you a little bit more accuracy and going to get you a little bit better of a spotting ability on gophers. Luckily, these things do come drill tapped for bases, so you can run a scope with a proper weaver mount on here, and you don't have to use those crappy 3/8 dovetail mounts that a lot of other 22s run. Usability wise, these rifles are pretty easy. Now the safety over here is not really where you can get to it with your thumb. So what I've typically done is just use my right forefinger for that. Just as something that's a little bit easier than just kind of like breaking my grip and throwing my thumb up there. But depending on your thumbs, maybe you can just as easily. Running the bolt is very nice and smooth. I really like how the bolt runs on these things. On my 17 HMR, it's just a little bit smoother than this one, but they're both very nice to use. One thing that I don't really like is the magazines themselves. That's because they have these like tiny little rails on them at the back there, especially these tiny little 5-rounders. It's just very difficult to get them in there. Now, instead of running those 5-rounders, the 10-rounders give you a little bit more purchase on there, and they'll work between the 17 or the 22 WMR. So 17 HMR, 22, I would definitely go for the longer 10-rounders. They also come in stainless. There's that other little 5-rounder, but again, it's too little and too finicky to try to ram that thing in, whereas these 10-rounders give a little bit more purchase, a little more to grab onto. I mean, with that guy in there anyway, it's still kind of a pain in the butt to carry like this as you're going along. So on a sling, or just grab that guy here and grab it along the front. It still balances fine just like that. So I would much rather run the 10-rounder. Less reloading too, right? Now the closest competition to this one is the Marlin 22 mag, which I like as well. The Marlin's got still a great little trigger on it, not quite as nice as this Savage Accu trigger, but the rest of it's quite good. When I compared the Marlin 17 HMR against the Savage 17 HMR, I found the Savage just to be a little bit more accurate. So that might come through with your rifle. You might find that Marlin's more accurate. They're both right around the same price, and they do generally the same thing. They've even got the same kind of fiddly mags. Man, it would be nice if either one of these companies really figured out this magazine thing. So again, that was the Savage 93F. This is just a real basic 22 Magnum rimfire, and if you're in the market for them, definitely check this one out and take a look at the Marlin as well. Thanks for watching.